Chapter 101, Zhao Ya's moved. As Xiji was adamant to acknowledge Zhang Xuan as her teacher, Yao Han had been looking into Zhang Xuan's background these few days. This Zhang Loshi was once known as a genius, reaching Fighter 3 Danzenki realm by 16 years old. However, his legacy stopped there. He had been stuck at that cultivation realm ever since, and as time passed, the genius became trash. At 18 years old, he took the teacher examination and passed in one go, thus becoming Hongshan Academy's youngest teacher back then. His name rang brightly, incurring the envy of numerous teachers. Initially, they thought that this young teacher would be able to produce good results and soar to great heights, yet the reality was cruel. After news of the cultivation of his student going berserk spread out, all of the students he admitted withdrew from his lessons and he was left alone. Eventually, he even scored a 0 for his teacher qualification examination, causing his reputation to sour further. Thus, Hongshan Academy's youngest teacher became a joke and the greatest trash. These rumors were everywhere. So he thought that it was just a moment of folly on Xiji's part, but as long as he properly enlightened her, she would realize how mistaken and see through the true nature of this trash of a teacher. At this moment, upon hearing that he scored perfectly for the first round of the apothecary examinations, his deep-rooted thoughts started to waver. Apothecaries had to have an in-depth knowledge of medicinal herbs and also a deep understanding of the human body, otherwise, it would have been impossible for them to concoct pills suited for cultivators. So, how could someone who passed the first round of the apprentice apothecary examination possibly cause a student's cultivation to go berserk? No matter how good he is in theories, it is useless if he is unable to utilize them practically. The second round of the examination is medicinal herb discernment time trial of the 10 medicinal herbs. If he were to get a single one of them wrong, he will fail the examination. Wen Zhu harumphed furiously. She still felt resentment toward Zhang Xuan initially. She thought that he was a playboy intentionally acting to attract her attention. In the end, he turned out to be someone capable, causing her face to burn in embarrassment and become unable to face the other party. At this point, they saw two people walking over. They were the two out of the three who passed the first round of examinations, Sun Tao and Qian Wenman. How is it, did you two pass the examination? Wen Zhu hurried forward and asked them. As frequent candidates for the apprentice apothecary examinations, they were well acquainted with one another. No. The both of them shook their heads in disappointment. They felt discontent, but this loss was something they could concede. After all, they had to concede even if they didn't want to. The other person scored full marks in the first round, and in the second, he was even able to point out the mistakes of true apothecaries. His abilities were way beyond their imaginations. Then what about Zhang Xuan? Upon hearing that they didn't pass the second round, Wen Zhu couldn't help but ask once more. He passed. He is an apprentice apothecary now. Sun Tao said. Apprentice apothecary? Wen Zhu's small stature staggered. Previously, when she was conversing with the other party, it had been clear to her that that fellow had zero understanding of medicinal herbs and such. In fact, he wasn't even clear on what an apothecary was initially. She thought that it was a joke for him to register for the examinations, so she was filled with disdain toward him. Yet not only did he pass the round of examinations, he even went on to bash through the remaining two to successfully become an apprentice apothecary. This slap caused a fiery and stinging sensation on her face. She had toiled for so many years, only to be remain blocked out in the very first round. Yet, the other party became an apprentice apothecary so easily. She even mocked the other party for his thick skin. Where did her confidence originate from? That when will Zhang Loshi come out? Zhao Ya looked around but didn't see Zhang Xuan anywhere. Thus, she asked the two. She wasn't as surprised as Wen Zhu was. That's because the image of Zhang Loshi in her heart was omnipotent, and becoming a mere apprentice apothecary should mean nothing at all to him. He went to the book collection vault. He intends to return tomorrow afternoon to undergo pill debate to become a certified apothecary. Sun Tao still found the situation unbelievable even as he said these words himself. How much guts did it take for him to choose to undergo pill debate right after becoming an apprentice apothecary? Undergo pill debate to become a certified apothecary? Wen Zhu staggered and her eyes were about to pop out from their sockets. Giddiness filled her head. Tomorrow afternoon? Are you for real? Why does it sound like a joke to me? Also, what in the world is a pill debate? Pill debate is another method for one to become an apothecary. One has to debate with 10 official apothecaries and emerge victorious over them. Seeing the perplexed looks of the crowd, Sun Tao explained this examination is even more difficult than pill forging and the penalties upon failure are much greater. At this point, he shook his head subconsciously. I have once read of pill debate in the books. The difficulty of it is much greater than the pill forging examination. One needs to triumph over 10 official apothecaries in terms of knowledge on practical aspects of pill forging. It is an exceptionally difficult test. Uncle Li suppressed the shock he was experiencing and nodded his head to affirm what Sun Tao said at the same time. He couldn't help but be baffled. He is able to become an apprentice apothecary at such a young age, so he shouldn't lack time. Why is he so anxious such that he had to choose to undergo pill debate? He could just tread upon the normal route to learn pill forging. After all, the consequences of failing a pill debate is difficult to bear. His accomplishment of becoming an apprentice apothecary under 20 years old was an incredible feat. Even when taking the previous 1,000 years of history of Tanxuan Kingdom's apothecary guild into account, he wouldn't lose out much to slow down and learn pill forging properly. There was no need for him to put himself at risk by undergoing pill debate. One must know that the difficulty of pill debate was several times that of pill forging and successes were rare. I'm not sure too. He seems to be looking for books regarding unique constitutions. However, these books are only available to certified apothecaries. Sun Tao mused for a moment and recalled the conversation between Zhang Xuan and Du Yangcheng. Oh, he also mentioned something about half a month. It seems that there is something urgent that requires him to become an apothecary within half a month to find those books. Half a month? Unique constitution? While Wen Zhu and the others simply found the situation baffling, Zhao Ya paled and trembled uncontrollably. She had a unique constitution, pure yin body. This was something that Zhang Loshi told her. Half a month? Wasn't that the day of the freshman tournament? to be rushing to accomplish it within half a month. Could it be that Zhang Luoxi intends to awaken her unique constitution to raise her strength? After all, a unique constitution held no might if it wasn't awakened. It must be it. Clenching her fists tightly, Zhao Ya suppressed the emotions in her heart. She looked at Uncle Li and asked, "Senior, you said that the penalties upon failure are great. May I ask what the penalties are?" "This I'm not too sure either." Uncle Li shook his head. He had only read of pill debate in the books, so he wasn't really aware of the penalties. "Oh, I know Master Ouyang had spoken of it previously." Sun Tao contemplated for a moment and said, "There is a total of 3 penalties. Firstly, one has to pay each apothecary with 100,000 gold coins, so that's a total of 1,000,000 gold coins for the 10 of them. Secondly, he has to suffer 100 god-slaying flogs. Thirdly, he is banned from the apothecary examination for 10 years. 1,000,000 gold coins? 100 god-slaying flogs? Banned from the apothecary examination for 10 years. Zhao Ya's body trembled even more intensely. This punishment was way too severe. In order to help her awaken her constitution, Zhang Luoxi was willing to go through so much peril. "Teacher, thank you. Even if I, Zhao Ya, were to be smashed to smithereens, it would be difficult for me to repay this gratitude." Unable to hold back her billowing emotions any longer, tears streamed down from Zhao Ya's clean jade-like face. Chapter 102, to the top of the world. Who? It's finally done. Zhang Xuan had been flipping through the books since afternoon, and it was already around 10 at night. Finally done with his work. Zhang Xuan heaved a sigh of relief. There were all kinds of books on in the basic tier book collection vault, and they were all regarding pill forging. Even though his cultivation realm had risen by leaps and bounds recently, flipping through the huge collection of books still caused him fatigue. After flipping through all of the books, he confirmed that there were no books regarding unique constitutions in this book collection vault. Naturally, he was unable to find an answer to his question. That was to say, he had to become an apothecary to look through the advanced tier book collection vault to achieve his goals. This knowledge should be enough for the apothecary examination. Even though the Apothecary Guild in Tangxuan Kingdom was only a small branch, it had the powerful headquarters backing it as such. Even if the country were to fall, the guild would not after a duration of several centuries, perhaps even a millennium. Even a basic tier book collection vault would contain a vast amount of knowledge in it. Even a true apothecary couldn't possibly finish all of the books and assimilate all knowledge in them for his own. However, Zhang Xuan was able to do so. With this much knowledge, if he were to claim to be the second most knowledgeable person in pill forging in Tangxuan Kingdom, no one would dare to claim themselves to be the first. Of course, this was all just theory. If he were to really try it, putting aside pill forging, he might even have difficulty starting the fire. "I should go and grab a bite." Fondling his protesting stomach, Zhang Xuan stretched his back and walked out of the book collection vault with widened strides. Right after eating breakfast, he went to lessons, underwent the Enlightenment Will trial and took the apprentice apothecary examination. After busying himself for an entire day, his stomach had already started growling furiously long ago. If not for the rise in his cultivation realm and enhanced physical body, he might have found himself unable to persist on for that long. The basic tier book collection vault was inside the examination hall for apprentice apothecaries. Walking out, he saw Ouyang Cheng and Du Man sitting inside. They were holding brushes in their hands, seemingly scribbling something on a piece of paper, and bewilderment, dilemma, contemplation, and confusion could be seen on their faces. "What are you all doing?" Seeing the two apothecaries in such a state, Zhang Xuan walked over curiously. The both of them were trying to figure out what Zhang Xuan was doing. Upon seeing him walk over, the both of them were taken aback. They hurriedly used their hands to cover the contents of the paper on the table. Zhang Xuan lowered his head to take a look. A few words come into his sight. Speculation on his motive for flipping through books in the book collection vault. Number 1. Act cool, 30 votes. Number 2. Boredom, 1 vote. Number 3. Investigating the material of the books, 1 vote. After reading the first few lines, black lines streaked across Zhang Xuan's face. "Is this about me?" He was the only one flipping through books in the book collection vault previously. "It is definitely about me. But what the heck do the votes mean? Furthermore, why is Act Cool in the first place, and the number of votes on it?" Cough cough. "We were just curious of your actions of flipping through the books in the book collection vault, thus, we couldn't help but discuss it." Exposed, Ouyang Chen suppressed his embarrassment and revealed the truth. Ouyang Chen has a reputation for being a strict and stern apothecary. To think that he would be hiding in the room with another apothecary to discuss the motive behind an apprentice apothecary's action of flipping through books, even getting others to vote on it, no one would believe it even if word was to spread out. "I wanted to look for a book, I wasn't able to find it, so I continued flipping through all of the books in the vault." Zhang Xuan casually answered. He mustn't reveal the truth about the Library of Heaven's Path, but his action of flipping through the books was indeed a little bizarre, so it couldn't be helped that others would hold suspicion toward his actions. Looks like he had to be more careful in the future. Even so, he was just flipping through books. Others might hold doubt toward the intention behind his actions, but at most, they would just be unable to make heads or tails out of his actions. It was impossible for them to suspect the possibility of an existence of a massive library in his head. Such a simple answer. Upon hearing the answer, Ouyang Cheng and Du Man looked constipated. They had been discussing the matter for an entire afternoon, even skipping their meals to do so. They thought that there was some special significance behind his actions. Never would they dream that the answer was so simple. What else would it be if not for that? Zhang Xuan asked. "It would do as long as it didn't involve the revelation of the existence of the Library of Heaven's Path." He could tell a lie without feeling embarrassed over it anyway. All right then." Ouyang Chen shook his head helplessly after investigating and analyzing the issue for an entire afternoon. He didn't expect the other party's answer to be so simple. Thus, to alleviate the awkwardness of the situation, he could only change the topic. "I have already informed the 10 apothecaries about the pill debate. They will be here tomorrow, so make preparations for it. It will be conducted here tomorrow afternoon." "Great. Zhang Xuan nodded his head after asking a few more questions about how the pill debate would be conducted. He turned around and took his leave. After walking out of the room, he heard Du Man's voice ringing behind him. You lost. Pay up. I lost. But you didn't win either. You wagered most of your money on him acting cool, Liang Chen said with a displeased tone. Zhang Xuan staggered. You all are respectable apothecaries, all right. To gamble over me. Furthermore, acting cool? Your head that I am acting cool. With a stifled sensation at his chest, Zhang Xuan walked to the entrance of the Apothecary Guild and caught sight of Zhao Yan and the others. Why are you here? Bewilderment flashed across his eyes. This is the Apothecary Guild, not the Academy. Why would Zhao Ya be here? Zhang Loshi, thank you. Upon seeing him, Zhao Ya could no longer suppress the emotions in her and kneels to the floor, gratitude reflected in her eyes. Stand up, what are you thanking me for? Zhang Xuan frowned. What happened to this lass? Kneeling down upon seeing me, could it be that her illness is cured? At this point, he asked, have you eaten the frigid sun mother grass yet? How are its effects? Upon hearing frigid sun mother grass, Yao Han, who considered the possibility of whether Zhang Xuan was ignorant of the value of the herb before gifting it to Zhao Ya, trembled. It looks like he knows the herb. If so, he should know the value of it as well. To give such a valuable herb to his student so casually, and to put himself in peril by taking the apothecary examination for the sake of awakening his student's unique constitution. Regardless of how Zhang Xuan's lessons were, just this responsibility of his was sufficient to leave him in awe. Zhang Loshi, I apologize for my previous insolent attitude and doubting your kindness. Please forgive me. Yao Han stepped forward and bowed in apology. His previous actions were truly laughable. How can such a responsible teacher be inadequate in his teachings? Seems like the rumors outside are untrue after all. This. Upon seeing the both of them behaving like that, Zhang Xuan blinked his eyes. Can anyone tell me what is going on? I had only taken an apprentice apothecary examination. Why are they suddenly behaving so bizarrely? Soon, he made sense out of the situation. Actually, his reason for coming here wasn't just to awaken Zhao Ya's unique constitution. It was more for Yuan Tao. Instead, he didn't expect such a simple action to induce such feelings of gratitude in her. However, he came to a realization after contemplating over the situation slightly in the perspective of others. Pill debate was something that was likely to end in failure. It was a huge risk to take. And yet he chose to proceed ahead. Even so, in their eyes, he had become a teacher who could give up his all and bash through all obstacles just for his students. Just this sentiment itself was priceless. Upon understanding this all, Zhang Xuan was at a loss for words. His actions had moved Zhao Ya, but similarly, the other party's actions had also moved him. In the past, he had only treated these students as anchors to prevent him from getting expelled. However, at this moment, he realized the simple fact that all humans have emotions. They would treat you like how you treat them. The children's desire for knowledge and the gratitude they felt toward him made him understand the responsibilities of a teacher and the heavy burden they shouldered. Don't worry, as my students, I will bring you all to greater heights, all the way to the top of the world. Clenching his fists tightly together, Zhang Xuan made a solemn vow. At this moment, he had finally made his metamorphosis from a transcender to a teacher. Boom. The moment such a thought appeared, at the apex of the Library of Heaven's Path, an intense peal sounded and a golden book formed. However, Zhang Xuan didn't notice it. Chapter 103, Fighter 6 Stan Pixie Realm, First Half. Zhang Loshi, I don't have sufficient money to pay for the frigid sun mother grass now, so I will pay you a portion first. Treat it as our buying city buying it from you. After all, we can't expect you to go bankrupt while teaching Xiaji. Xiaji, young mistress, oblivious to the changes that had occurred in Zhang Xuan, Yao Han stepped forward to pass over banknotes worth 20,000 in total. There's no need for it. It's just a medicinal herb. It's just a small affair. Zhang Xuan shook his head. The responsibility of a teacher had just dawned on him, so how could he accept money from a student at this moment? Furthermore, it was just a stalk of frigid sun mother grass. Frigid sun grass was only worth 100 gold coins per stalk, so a frigid sun mother grass shouldn't be worth much either. His fortune counted in the millions, so why would he bother about that petty sum? Furthermore, he obtained this stalk by acting cool, not even spending the least bit of money on it. His heart didn't take giving it away like this. Upon seeing his resolute determination, Yao Han could only keep his money. Feeling impressed, he commented, Zhang Loshi, I'm really impressed by your generosity to give a herb worth 100,000 gold coins just like that. It's laughable that I thought that you were trying to scam Xiaji. What? Worth 100,000 gold coins? Zhang Xuan's lips quivered. This frigid sun mother grass is worth 100,000 gold coins? Are you for it? If I knew that it was worth 100,000 gold coin, I should have accepted your money. Other people gave presents to their teachers in a show of filial piety, so why was it that when it came to him, he was paying them instead? Yes. Yao Han looked over with a peculiar expression. Could it be that Zhang Loshi doesn't know of its price? Even though his heart was bleeding, he knew that he couldn't retract his words at this point. As such, he assumed a stern face once more. With an arrogant aura that treated all worldly objects contemptuously, he said, Of course not. Money means nothing to me at all. Zhao Ya is my student, and a herb worth 100,000 gold coins is but a small matter if it's beneficial to her. There's no need to hesitate over mere money. Since what's done is done, he could only go ahead and sell her the favor. Xiaji has truly found a good teacher. Seeing his attitude, Yao Han was truly in awe of him. No wonder Xiaji kept praising him. Just his morals itself is sufficient to send others in awe. Like me. Standing by the side, Wenzia looked on the situation in embarrassment. If only there was a burrow here, she would have dived in immediately. The other party was such an upstanding and noble teacher, yet she mistook him as a pursuer of hers, treating him disdainfully. Her actions were truly laughable. Thankfully, he had a generous heart and was indifferent to her rudeness. Otherwise, his identity as an apprentice apothecary was more than sufficient to have her permanently expelled. Let's return. I have to prepare for the pill debate tomorrow as well. A single act had cost him 100,000 gold coins. Besides, the money wasn't anything much after all. Bai City was paying for it, not Zhao Ya. Suppressing the urge to cry, Zhang Xuan walked out to the streets. By the time he returned to the academy after having dinner, it was already nearing midnight. Since I'm not tired yet, I should look into how I can break into Pixiu realm. In his previous life, he was a nocturnal owl. Furthermore, given his level of cultivation, his physical condition was much better than how it was back then. Even though it was already late at night, he wasn't tired in the least. After exposing the might of a Pixiu realm expert in the Enlightenment Tower today, the academy should be making a move soon to confer him the title of an elder. Upon becoming an elder, he would be granted entry into the Elder's Compendium Pavilion. By then, he would be able to obtain sufficient Fighter 6 Dan secret manuals to perfect his Heaven's Path divine art. Of course, before then, studying it was okay as well. After all, he had duplicated quite a few secret manuals from Master Lu Chen's residence, even though only a partial of the words were true, and as such, unable to be linked together to form a complete version. It was still worth studying. With a jolt of his mind, a dozen books or so which he saw in Master Lu Chen's residence appeared in his consciousness. Actually, Pixiu realm cultivation isn't very difficult. The only difficulty one will face is the sequence of breaking through the acupoints. After scanning through the numerous manuals, Zhang Xuan came to a realization. It is said that there are 108 acupoints on a human body, however, only 72 of which can be opened. Furthermore, there is a specific sequence to opening these acupoints. Everyone's physical body is different, and as such, there is a different sequence for everyone to follow to achieve optimal results. If one didn't find the correct route, it's likely that they might only be able to open 30 to 40 acupoints and be stuck there for the rest of their lives. It's just like cleansing the silt and mud off a river. Only by cleansing from the upper stream can the river be cleansed entirely. If one were to start from the center, not only will the river not be cleaned thoroughly, it may even cause a blockade. This is precisely the reason why the first acupoint to open is important. If one were to get it wrong, it will have disastrous repercussions. This book Golden Flame Technique says that the first acupoint to open should be the Shinli acupoint. Only with strength can one break through the other more important acupoints. On the other hand, this Art of Sun adaptation says that one should start from the Zhongshu acupoint because it is in the direct center of the human body. The acupoint one should start with was different in every single book, and each of their reasoning seemed logical. Others might end up becoming confused upon reading through all these, but Zhang Xuan possessed the library of Heaven's Path with but a single glance. He knew that all of it were false. Being unable to find the correct acupoint is equivalent to being unable to find the source of a river. If an error was to occur from the very start, it would be difficult to push on afterward. Forget it. After studying for a moment longer, Zhang Xuan realized that none of the manuals held the correct answer to the first acupoint he should break through. Just when he was about to give up, an idea popped up in his mind. If what is recorded in all these books are false, and given that a human only has 108 acupoints in total, if I were to try them one by one, wouldn't I be able to figure out the sequence of which I should open up my acupoints? The method to break through acupoints was simple. One just had to use their Zenki to search through it. The main problem was the sequence to doing so, since these were all wrong. Of the 108 acupoints in his body, there had to be a correct one. Other people might be unable to try them one by one, but such a problem didn't exist for him, as he possessed the library of Heaven's Path. After eliminating all mistakes, what was left should be naturally correct. Give it a try. At this point, Zhang Xuan didn't hesitate any further. Picking up a brush and paper, he wrote out the 108 acupoints on a human body out and cancelled away the incorrect first acupoints from the various secret manuals from it, followed by the other acupoints that were proven to be in the correct positions for him in the sequence listed in the books. After which, only 20 acupoints were left of the 108. However, there was no need to worry. Zhang Xuan hand-copied a manual and alternated the 20 acupoints in the first acupoint within the sequence one by one. Weng. A new secret manual appeared in the library of Heaven's Path, displaying the errors and flaws of it. At his 13th try, his mind jolted and the secret manual reflected the first acupoint that had no flaws. Ha, I've succeeded. To think that it would be the Xinqiao acupoint, since the library of Heaven's Path has not pointed out any errors in it, it means that this is the first acupoint I should break through to enter Pixiu realm. Xinqiao acupoint is a hidden acupoint in a human body without pure Zenki. It's impossible for a Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle to open it. No wonder it isn't written in any of these manuals. After verifying the first acupoint he had to open, Zhang Xuan was filled with excitement. Xinqiao acupoint was located in the depths of one's heart. It was reputed as one of the 36 locked acupoints without sufficiently pure Zenki. Not only would one be unable to open it, one's cultivation might even go berserk while attempting to open it. If not for the verification by the library of Heaven's Path, he would have never believed that this would be the first acupoint he needed to open. It was no wonder that he was unable to find the correct sequence in the manuals he duplicated. To think that the correct acupoint for him to start with was one of the locked acupoints. From the looks of it now, even though it was termed as locked acupoint, but with the correct sequence, one would be able to break it open. Chapter 104, Fighter 6 Dan Pixiu Realm, Second Half. Let's begin. Everything else went easy. After discovering the correct acupoints, the method to breaking them open was about the same. Without much hesitation, Zhang Xuan directed the Zenki in his body towards the Xinqiao acupoint. Boom. Not long after, there was a loud explosion and Zhang Xuan's body swayed uncontrollably. Instantaneously, Zhang Xuan felt a qualitative improvement in his mental state. Regardless of whether it was his vitality or his reaction speed, they improved by leaps and bounds. He had successfully broken through Fighter 6 Dan Pixiu realm. If he closed his eyes at this instant, he could sense radiance emitting from an acupoint within his body, like a star in the middle of a dark night. Goo goo goo. With the acupoint opened, spiritual energy immediately gushed in, inducing a rise in his strength by a single ding. Great. Sensing the changes in his body, Zhang Xuan knew that he had successfully accomplished a breakthrough to the next realm. Even without cultivation technique manuals, I can always try to fumble around for the correct part by experimenting with every single possibility, even if there are 10,000 possible routes in my cultivation. As long as I toss out all of the erroneous ones, I will eventually find the correct one. His eyes twinkled with excitement. It was just a conjecture he came up with abruptly, so he didn't really expect to succeed. Of course, such a method was only possible for Pixiu realm. There was a total of 108 Aku points in the human body and they were all fixed in place, thus, it was possible for him to try them one by one. However, if he really tried to create a cultivation technique of his own out of nowhere, even with the Library of Heaven's Path, he would surely tire himself to death. Actually, Zhang Xuan didn't know that the reputation for the 36 locked Aku points didn't come from nowhere without the purest Zenki. It was impossible for one to break open the Aku points. Using a simple analogy, if the other Aku points are paths, the 36 locked Aku points are pinhole-sized paths. Impure Zenki is like muddy water. Even though it can flow through the other paths with ease, it is an impossible task for it to pass through the pinhole-sized paths. Just the silt in the muddy water itself is sufficient to plug up the path. If one tries to break through it forcefully, they might end up crushing their Aku point instead, causing an imbalance in their body, and ultimately, death. Zhang Xuan cultivated the flawless Heaven's Path divine art and his Zenki had no impurities in it whatsoever. Like completely pure water, even when facing pinhole-sized paths, it could easily pass through to break open the Aku point successfully. I should continue with the second Aku point. With a single successful experience, Zhang Xuan continued to look for the second Aku point. After a while, the second Aku point was successfully opened as well. The hardest part of the Pixiu realm was in finding the correct sequence to open the Aku points. As long as one found it, breaking through the Pixiu realm was an extremely easy task. Zhao Ya's residence Yao Han was sitting at a distance not too far away from Zhao Ya. Xiaji, tell me about this Zhang Loshi and your physical condition. Why do you need to consume the medicinal herb? Initially, he was prejudiced against Zhang Xuan, but after seeing him put himself in peril for his students and gifting a medicinal herb worth 100,000 gold coins so casually, he couldn't help but doubt the notions he had of him. His actions might be a facade, but that tranquil and nonchalant aura of his and that disposition of an enlightened expert couldn't be feigned. How could one who possessed such aura, disposition, and morals possibly be a villain who fooled women? Looked like he had been mistaken from the very start. Furthermore, Xiaji had been healthy all along. Why did she need to consume this medicinal herb? Not to mention, such an expensive and valuable one? Filled with doubt, he couldn't help but bring them up upon reaching her residence. Zhang Loshi. Initially, I was prejudiced against him as well until I saw his capabilities personally and listened to his lectures. Zhao Ya started to recount everything that happened ever since she met Zhang Xuan. Upon speaking about her physical illness, her face flushed red. In the past, she would definitely be too embarrassed to speak of it. She would wonder if she had problems with her innate nature and her body. However, upon getting the truth of the matter from Zhang Loshi, she managed to get past that barrier of hers. For a person possessing pure yin body to cultivate a pure yin cultivation technique, it resulted in yin energy accumulating in her body, and if not for her outstanding mental resilience, she would have given in long ago. Pure yin body? Xiaji has pure yin body? To think that we were unaware of that. We even made you cultivate the white jade pure maiden skill. Upon hearing the symptoms and pain the girl had undergone throughout the years, Yao Han's face paled. He was of the same generation as Zhao Ya's father and he had long seen Zhao Ya as his own daughter. If not for Zhang Loshi seen through to the crux of the problem, Xiaji might still be trapped in a quagmire of pain, unable to pull herself out of it, unable to see through this all despite being a senior who had been beside her all this time. He felt intense self-reproach and remorse. Back at the Apothecary Guild, he had heard her say that she had a unique constitution. Back then, it wasn't convenient for him to ask about it. Never in his dreams would he imagine that it was of this kind, and that such after effects would occur upon cultivation of pure yin cultivation technique. Since this Zhang Loshi is so capable, why would his reputation be so? After listening to the words of the young girl, this Zhang Loshi seemed to be an incredible figure of great capabilities. However, if he were that incredible, his reputation should have long ago run far and wide. Why would the results of his investigation be that he had failed the teacher qualification examination and even caused a student's cultivation to go berserk? Today, due to Liu Yang's affair, the Education Bureau conducted an Enlightenment Will trial. Zhao Ya went on to talk about the incident that occurred at the Enlightenment Will Tower. What? You mean it was due to Elder Shang Chen's intentional oppression that his reputation is so poor? Zhang Loshi, in consideration for the image of the academy, didn't expose him? His strength is already that of Pixiu realm pinnacle? Yao Han shuddered. If he didn't hear this news firsthand, he would have never believed it. For the head of the Education Bureau of an established academy to be so shameless. On the other hand, for Zhang Loshi to be such a noble person, looked like he was indeed mistaken. Not just him, everyone was mistaken about him. I have never seen Elder Shang Chen, but Shang Bin Loshi, who is his grandson, is interest-motivated and vicious naturally. His grandfather can't be any better. If anyone else heard such rumors about the head of the Education Bureau, they would definitely doubt the reliability of the news. However, Yao Han didn't have the slightest hesitation in believing Zhao Ya's words. He had never met Shang Chen, but he had met Shang Bin. The wounds on his face were the doing of the other party. Since the grandson was of such character, how noble can the grandfather be? Birds of the same feathers flock together. Uncle Yao, now that you know about Zhang Loshi's affairs, I hope that you can be more respectful to him from now on. After concluding her explanation, Zhao Ya looked at Yao Han with a grim expression. Rest assured, your uncle isn't a foolish person. I know what to do from now on. Yao Han nodded his head the next instant. His expression darkened. The authoritativeness and self-confidence of the butler of a powerful family exuded from him as he continued. However, this Shang Chen and Shang Bin had caused me to bear misunderstandings about Zhang Loshi, not to mention how they soiled his reputation. I must converse with the city lord and have them punished. Yeah? Such vile people deserve to be punished. Zhao Yan nodded her head. She was unlike Wang Ying. Wang Ying had a docile and honest nature while she, as the daughter of a city lord, possessed a valiant disposition. Otherwise, she wouldn't have barged into Zhang Xuan's classroom angrily upon hearing others praise him. This was precisely the reason why, upon hearing Yao Han say that he would teach the duo a lesson, she didn't hesitate and immediately nodded her head in agreement. If not for this head of the Education Bureau, Zhang Luoxi wouldn't suffer such injustice and be viewed mockingly and contemptuously by the rest of the world. Otherwise, given his capabilities, how could he possibly be unable to recruit any students? They must be taught a lesson, and a severe one at that, one that will send their reputation down the drain. Uncle Yao, I will be troubling you to spread this information. The more people know of it, the better. At this, Zhao Yan issued a command. Yes. Yao Han nodded his head. Chapter 105, New Worries, First Half. Peeper, Billy Pala. Throughout the entire night, the sound of him breaking through in his cultivation could be heard every now and then as his strength soared continuously. To think that the night would be over in a flash. Finally, Zhang Xuan opened his eyes. The sun had already risen. Despite going without sleep the entire night, not only did Zhang Xuan not feel fatigued, he even felt revitalized instead. With the level of purity of his Zenki and the uniqueness of his Heaven's Path divine art, breaking through his cultivation realm was an extremely easy task. It was just that it took time for him to identify the correct Aku points. Even so, in a single night, he had opened over 20 Aku points. Going by conventional standards, a fighter could only open 72 Aku points in their entire body. Every 18 Aku points opened was considered a tier. That was to say, if one opened 118 Aku points, he was in Pixie Realm primary stage, 1936 Aku points for the intermediate stage, 3754 for advanced stage and 5572 for pinnacle. However, due to the low purity of Zenki that most people possessed and incorrect sequence they opened their Aku points in, the cultivation of most people stopped progressing after opening 30 to 40 Aku points. The only way for them to grow stronger was to try to break through Fighter 7 Dan Tongxuan realm. As a result, the classification above remained in theory based on Tongxuan Kingdom's standards. Pixie realm basic stage was classified as opening 110 Aku points, intermediate stage 1120, advanced 2130 and pinnacle 31 and above, as long as one opened 31 Aku points and above. Regardless of whether it was 31 or 72, they were all considered as Pixie realm pinnacle in Tongxuan Kingdom. When Zhang Xuan was still acting Lai Realm Pinnacle, he already possessed 8 ding of strength after recultivating his first 3 cultivation realms. His strength was boosted by 12 ding, adding them up together. He possessed a total of 20 ding of strength before breaking into Pixie Realm after opening 20 Aku points. Just taking into account Zenki itself, he possessed 40 ding of strength that was equivalent to a Pixie Realm Pinnacle expert. Other people had difficulty opening a single Aku point in the course of half a month while he opened 20 of it in a single night. Furthermore, 90% of the time was spent on researching the correct sequence. No one would be able to believe that it was possible for one's cultivation realm to soar that rapidly. However, if the flawless Heaven's Path divine art didn't have such effects, it wouldn't be worthy of the word perfect. After grabbing some food to eat, he headed to the classroom. You're saying that in order to find a way to awaken your unique constitution, Zhang Luoxi was willing to undergo pill debate to become an apothecary? In the classroom, Zhao Ya revealed what had happened yesterday to Wang Ying and the rest. Zhang Luoxi had created cultivation techniques for us, and now he is putting himself at risk for our welfare. No matter what, we must achieve good results in the freshman tournament, otherwise, we would have truly let down Zhang Luoxi, and his efforts to groom us would be in vain. The eyes of Zheng Yang and the others burned passionately. Even the usually lazy Yuan Tao was agitated. Warriors died fighting to protect their soulmates. Zhang Luoxi had done so much to protect them. If they still knew none of the gratitude at this point, they would truly be ingrates. No, I have to start cultivating right now. Me too. In an instant, zeal consumed everyone and only a single goal retained in their minds, that was to bring glory to Zhang Luoxi by astonishing everyone with their strength in the freshman tournament. What is wrong with them all? Upon walking into the classroom, he saw that not only were all his students present, every single of them were cultivating seriously and diligently. Zhang Xuan found the situation slightly queer. Was there something wrong with these fellows? Teacher. Just when he was about to start his lessons, he saw Wang Tao, Wang Yan, and Zhao Yanfeng walking over. Zhang Xuan had already agreed to have Wang Tao and Wang Yan listen to by the side of the class. However, why was Zhao Yanfeng here too? I impertinently made my own decision to withdraw from Luoxi's tutelage. If my decision had caused you trouble, please punish me. As soon as Zhang Xuan walked into the classroom, Zhao Yanfeng immediately confessed. Hearing these words, Zhang Xuan came to a realization why Xun picked a fight with him out of nowhere. So this was the reason. Despite being the most reputable star teacher in the academy, 2 students of his withdrew from his lessons to listen to the lessons of their worst teacher. No matter who it was, they would definitely find this situation unacceptable. How could he continue teaching other students in the future if word were to spread out? How could he win his students' trust like this? Alright, you can listen to my lessons. Since the matter had already happened, if he sent Zhao Yanfeng back, others might think that he was afraid of Xun. As such, he could only pretend to be unaware of the matter. In any case, he wasn't obliged to offer pointers to students listening in his lesson. They were free to leave if they want to, and it wouldn't really waste any time of his. Stop for a moment. You all should have already tried to cultivate the cultivation techniques I passed you all yesterday. Ignoring the trio, Zhang Xuan turned his attention to Zhao Ya, Wang Ying, and the others. We have. The eyes of his students glowed in excitement. The cultivation technique Zhang Luoxi had created for them was incredible. With just a single night of training, they felt the energy within their body growing stronger. Just the effort of a single day was comparable to what they achieved in 10 previously. As such, they felt even more impressed with the teacher before them. Let me see your punching routines, Wang Ying. We'll start from you. Zhang Xuan turned his gaze over to her. Yes. Wang Ying stepped forward and swiftly executed a punching routine. Not bad. After which, Zhang Xuan casually offered some pointers and pointed out a few flaws in her cultivation. The same occurred for Zhao Ya, Liu Yang, and the others. All in all, the speed at which his 5 students were cultivating it were rather fast. In fact, it was an astonishing speed compared to other students. Even so, if they were to continue at this pace, there would still be a significant gap between his students and Lu Xun's. Lu Xun was a star teacher of the academy. Those who studied under him were basically the top students of the entire academy. The entrance examination assessed the students' overall performance and their potential. Zhao Ya, Wang Ying, and the others were only able to squeeze into the top 100 via their potential if one were to only consider their fighting prowess. Only Zhao Ya was better off among the 5 of them. The other 4 would probably be ranked below 500. This was especially true for Yuan Tao. His placing in the entrance examination was reflective of his strength. It was impossible to have the several hundred of students under Lu Xun fight with the 5 students of his. That would be unfair. As such, he would pick 5 of them out to fight with them. To choose the top 5 out of several hundred powerful students, it was clear to see how difficult it would be for Zhao Ya and the others to triumph over them. Putting aside the others, the top 3 students of the entrance examination had come under his tutelage, and all 3 of them had already broken into fighter 2 Dan. Given how the 5 of them were unable to defeat Zhong, who was ranked 4th, despite ganging up against him, how could they possibly deal with the other 3 individually? Even though potential, talent, and personality could help to boost a student's ranking in the freshman tournament, what was valued the highest was still strength. Without strength, everything else was empty talk. Once they lose on the sparring field, all of the former would be negated by the others. Wang Ying's legs has just recovered and her body hasn't adapted to the changes in her body yet. As such, she is unable to utilize her strength properly with 2 months of rest. Her condition should improve, but half a month, that is too difficult. Zheng Yang has just escaped from his trauma, allowing his mastery of the spear to improve rapidly. However, it's possible for weapons to be banned in the freshman tournament. Given the nature of it as a sparring contest, his advantage might very possibly become his downfall. I have to find a way to boost his bare-handed fighting skills within this period. Also, it will take at least half a month for the condition of Liu Yang's right arm to improve, and by then time is truly lacking. Looking through the conditions of the few via the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xuan rubbed his glabella and his worry reflected on his face. Chapter 106, New Worries, Second Half. If he were to train them conventionally, he was confident that he could induce a massive improvement in his 5 students, grasping the entire school by surprise. However, it was too daunting a task to achieve it within half a month to make it in time for the freshman tournament. Regardless of whether it was Wang Ying, Zhao Ya, Zheng Yang, Liu Yang or Wang Tao, each of them had problems with their bodies. Even though he knew the remedy to treating each of them, it was hard for him to resolve their problems entirely within this short period of time. The Library of Heaven's Path could see through flaws, but it didn't show him the correct way to resolving them. The methods he came up with to solve the problems that his students encountered were the conclusions he came up with after researching innumerable books, so the effectiveness of them all could only be considered average. That short amount of time he had wasn't sufficient to solve their problems entirely, needless to say, induce a rapid growth in their cultivation. Of course, if he were to impart the Heaven's Path divine art to them, their cultivation would surely soar immediately. However, Zhang Xuan knew that he mustn't impart the cultivation technique to anyone else. Possessing a treasure beyond his ability to guard was a crime. It was possible that it might bring him calamity if news of his cultivation technique were to spread out. Even if the Library of Heaven's Path was able to identify the locations of the Mingmen of his opponents, it wasn't of much use if he was battling against enemies far above his cultivation realm. Putting aside the fact that true experts did not have such weakness, and even if they had, if he was unable to match up to them in terms of speed and strength, he might not be able to damage the latter even if he were to hit them squarely at their vitals. Zheng Yang's situation is slightly easier to resolve. I can try to find a battle technique for him within half a month. He should be able to achieve some level of accomplishment in it. This should be sufficient for him to deal with most opponents. I have helped Wang Ying to open up the block taku points on her legs. However, 2 years of injury has caused severe damage to her fundamentals. Her meridians and muscles require a long period of recovery. Conventional methods can't possibly allow her legs to recover completely in half a month, needless to say, attain a higher level, unless her legs are nourished with a specialized medicinal solution. On the other hand, Liu Yang needs some pills to clear his obstructed meridians. As for Zhao Ya and Yuan Tao, just as what I have analyzed before, it should be sufficient as long as I find a way to awaken their unique constitution. All these sounded easy, but carrying them out would prove to be difficult. Putting aside the others, even Zheng Yang's problem, which seemed easy to solve, was tricky. He had learned the way of the spear for many years, and he might find it difficult to grasp bare-handed techniques if he was unable to assimilate the battle technique to his own. It might potentially become his downfall instead, causing his fighting prowess to regress instead. Learning powerful battle techniques took time, and learning weak ones were pointless. To assimilate a technique to his own in half a month, the difficulty to do so was clear for all to see. Putting aside the matter of Zheng Yang's battle technique, Wang Ying's medicinal solution should be able to be found in the Apothecary Guild. That is to say, the problems of the 4 of them can be settled at the Apothecary Guild. Determination reflected in Zhang Xuan's eyes. Looks like I have to pass today's pill debate by hook or by crook. Actually, after the threat of his expulsion had passed, he could have taken it easy and taught his students leisurely. However, since Lu Xun came running over to undermine his dignity, as a transcender with a cheat code, how could he possibly allow him to climb over his head? Sayings such as the river reverses its flow after 30 years were all nonsense. One didn't simply wait for revenge to come by itself since the other party is willing to send his face over. Naturally, Zhang Xuan wouldn't go easy on him. Furthermore, even though it seemed as though he had settled the education bureau and wouldn't be fired in the short term, but there were still a lot of people waiting for him to make a fool out of himself. After all, he stepped over the dignity of a school leader as a teacher and caused a scandal in the school. People were already gossiping about how the school didn't know how to choose its personnel. There wasn't a single organization that would allow the existence of a ticking time bomb in their ranks. If he was unable to make his stand in the freshman tournament, all kind of pressure would come stacking upon him, making his life difficult. Thus, he had to win, regardless of the price he had to pay. As for why he didn't choose to simply leave the academy when there's a massive world out there as a teacher, if he were to lose upon being challenged, it was no different from a guilty criminal escaping pursuit. It would leave a stain in his records in the teacher guild, and by then, he would probably be unable to even be promoted to a high-level teacher, much less say, master teacher. However, this wasn't the main reason. The main reason was that these 5 students of him already held absolute trust in him. He had already become an important person in their lives, and as a teacher, he could not let them down. Alright, I'll start the lessons now. Upon arriving at a conclusion, Zhang Xuan didn't panic and started teaching his students calmly. His lectures were based on the numerous correct theories he had gathered from all the books in the teacher's compendium pavilion. They were profound albeit boring, giving the listeners an epiphany. Not only did his 5 students benefit greatly from his lecture, even Wang Tao, Wang Yan, and Zhao Yanfeng, who were listening in by the side, flushed red in agitation. They felt as though they had just eaten a ginseng fruit. At this moment, they realized that just by listening in, even without Zhang Loxi's personal guidance, they had struck the jackpot. As long as they continued listening to his lessons seriously, their cultivation would surely rise by leaps and bounds. What Zhang Loxi was explaining was a new type of training system, an entirely new perspective, something that would revolutionize the entire world of cultivation. I'll end the lesson here. Cultivate properly when you all return. I will check your cultivation tomorrow. Looking at the time, it was already nearing noon. Zhang Xuan gestured for them to leave. Yes. Zhao Yan and the others rose and bade Zhang Xuan farewell. The pill debate is about to start. I should head over now. Time didn't wait for anyone since he applied for the pill debate. He naturally would not give up on it. Zhang Xuan walked out of the classroom toward the apothecary guild. Soon, upon reaching the guild, Wen Zhu came welcoming him. The contemptuous gaze yesterday had been replaced with that of respect. Even though the person in front was younger than her, he was already a certified apprentice apothecary. She dared not to offend him. Apothecary Wu Yangcheng asked me to wait here for you. He says that the 10 apothecaries are here and the pill debate can start at any time now. Of course, if you wish to go back on your words, you can also choose to cancel this pill debate. Wen Zhu said, there's no need to cancel it. Zhang Xuan shook his head. It would take too much time for him to become a 1-star apothecary through pill forging. Since he was able to do it today, there was no reason for him to back off. This way. As though seeing through his intentions, Wen Zhu shook her head and brought him in. It was the building where the apprentice apothecary examination was held. However, they proceeded deeper within and soon, they arrived at a vast hall, several hundred square meters large. 10 chairs were placed in a circle. At the center there was a giant cauldron placed behind the circle of chairs and a flame burned majestically beneath it, bringing one a stifling sensation. Pill debate, in order to ascertain whether a theory was true or not, had to be verified on the field. The cauldron was here for such use. Zhang Xuan, you're here. It isn't too late to regret now. Rest assured, with your talents, if you were to become my apprentice, I will make sure that you will be able to forge pills within half a year to pass the apothecary examinations. Jia. The door opened and Du Yangcheng walked out. His words carried a tone of persuasion to it. He still didn't think that it was likely for this young man to pass the pill debate. Half a year is too long. Zhang Xuan shook his head. What a joke. If I had half a year of time, I wouldn't have to go through the trouble to come knocking at the apothecary guild in search of books. Alright. Knowing that there was no way to persuade him otherwise, Wu Yangcheng shook his head in disappointment. In his perspective, Zhang Xuan was still young and thus, it couldn't be helped that he would be complacent once he blew it up. He would know the difficulty of pill debate. Esteemed guests, please enter. Upon his shout, numerous human figures entered the room. There were exactly 10 of them, and some of them were middle-aged while others are elderly. Even the youngest of them was probably at minimum 40 years old. The apothecary from yesterday, Du Man, was also within the group. These people were wearing a robe specially made for apothecaries. There was a unique emblem hanging on their chest, and the single star on it was exceptionally conspicuous. 1-star apothecaries. Chapter 107, Pill Debate begins. Normally, if one wanted to take the examination for a 1-star apothecary, a 2-star apothecary had to be present to witness the proceedings. However, Zhang Xuan was taking the pill debate examination instead of the traditional pill forging examination as such. His examination only required 10 1-star apothecaries to conduct the examination. Even so, the entire proceedings had to be recorded using a record crystal, so that the headquarters could check and verify it. In fact, even some apprentice apothecaries were qualified to look through it, and if it was proven that some of the examiners went easy on the examinee or so, all apothecaries involved in the proceedings would be stripped of their position and expelled. This was precisely the reason why no one dared to go easy on others during a pill debate, regardless of how formidable the power backing the examinee was. They were unable and unwilling to do so. Guild leader Wu Yang, you said that someone wants to undergo pill debate. It can't be this young brat here, can it? Upon sitting down, they glanced at Zhang Xuan and a bizarre expression appeared on their faces. An apothecary took the initiative to pose the doubts of them all to Wu Yangcheng. Those who undergo pill debate were either master teachers or scholars who were well versed in pills and medicines. Upon receiving the notice, everyone thought that it would be an elderly. Never in their dreams did they expect to see a young man who was barely even 20. Guild leader Wu Yang, are you sure you aren't joking with us? You really aren't pulling our legs. Forged pills are just like white wine. The older the alcohol is, the more fragrant it is. Age may not mean much, but a veteran with numerous years of research behind him is definitely in a better position than someone who had just started studying the subject. A fellow who isn't even 20 yet wants to undergo pill debate. Even if he started to learn from his mother's womb, how much can he learn? Zhang Xuan may be young, but he has a deep comprehension of medicinal herbs. He even achieved a perfect score in the apprentice apothecary written paper examination. Upon seeing the doubtful looks on everyone's face, Ouyang Cheng explained, "Perfect score? That means nothing at all. The apprentice apothecary written paper only assesses the student's understanding of the medicinal properties of herbs, their classification, and traits. Scoring full marks can only mean that he has a solid foundation. However, to conduct a pill debate based on that, calling all of us over for that, aren't you being a little too reckless? Pill forging isn't just about understanding the properties of medicinal herb and their classification. It is much more profound than that. One has to feel and comprehend the art of pill forging if he hopes to become an apothecary just because he knows some basic stuff. Isn't he being a little way too optimistic?" The crowd chirped in, their tones filled with contempt and disdain. Written paper was just an examination conducted for apprentice apothecary. Official apothecaries often came into contact with medicinal herbs, and scoring full marks for them meant nothing at all. Upon seeing so many people treat him contemptuously before he even got an opportunity to speak, Zhang Xuan felt a little helpless. If an apothecary's skill was proportionate to his age, you might as well dig a few of them up from the graves. Pill forging? They would be formidable if they didn't turn themselves to ashes in the midst of doing so. Cough. Zhang Xuan coughed to interrupt the commotion occurring among the apothecaries and spoke. "Guild leader Ouyang didn't invite you all here to talk about age. I may be young, but that doesn't mean I'm unable to match up to the rest of you in terms of forging pills." "Match up to the rest of us? You aren't even an apothecary, and yet you are so arrogant that you'd look down on us? Youngsters should be humble despite not knowing much about pills. You dare to undergo pill debate? You sure are gutsy. Arrogant fellow. When the pill debate begins in a moment's time, I hope that you still can talk as casually as you are doing now." The moment he spoke up, all their arrows came aiming toward him. A deep frown was on every single one of their faces as they attempted to tear him apart with their words. Pill debate was actually equivalent to challenging the wisdom of 10 apothecaries with the knowledge of a single individual. All the apothecaries who gathered here upon Ouyang Cheng's call were all famous figures in Danxuan Kingdom, and every single one of them were of high standing. If they were to lose to a master teacher or an elder, it was still a result acceptable to them, but for an immature brat who wasn't even 20 yet, if they were to really lose to him, how could they still uphold their dignity? Thus, they didn't have any intention to trick Zhang Xuan kindly from the moment they saw him. On the contrary, they tried to oppress him from the very start. It was an attempt to crush his confidence. As a bachelor in his previous life, he was tortured daily by the loving display of couples every day. Even so, didn't he manage to overcome them and live on? This kind of attacks no longer worked on Zhang Xuan anymore. All right. The scent of gunpowder was already apparent even though the pill debate had yet to begin. Upon seeing the argument escalating, dark lines streaked across Ouyang Cheng's face. He hurriedly interjected, "There is no use talking about it all. Everything should be proven with capabilities instead. After all, capability doesn't differentiate between ages. Since I have gathered everyone here to conduct a pill debate, then let's just go straight to the point and begin. I'll first talk about the rules of the pill debate." Afraid that the crowd might come up with even more toxic words, Ouyang Cheng immediately began explaining. Pill debate isn't a true debate. Rather, the 10 apothecaries will raise questions for the examinee to answer. As long as there's a question he is unable to answer or answers erroneously, the examinee fails. If both parties are unsure of the answers to the questions raised, a test can be conducted on the spot to verify the answer. Whoever's theory is able to produce higher quality pills will win. Of course, the questions raised by the apothecaries must be within the sphere of the knowledge of a one-star apothecary. Also, the examiners are not allowed to pose a question about secrets unknown to others. At this point, Ouyang Cheng scanned the surroundings and asked, "Are there any other questions?" The rules were simple and the explanation was clear. No. The crowd shook their heads simultaneously. As an apothecary, even if they had never heard of pill debate, they should have done their homework on it beforehand. There was a limit to the questions they could raise to the examinee. After all, how could an apprentice apothecary possibly answer a question about forging a grade 3 pill or some profound pill forging method? Since there are no questions, then Ouyang Cheng raised his hand grandly, and just as he was about to announce the start of the pill debate, Zhang Xuan stood up with a frown. "Hold for a moment. Why? Are you scared now? It's too late now. It's too late for you. Regret your decision. We can either begin the pill debate now or you can admit your defeat straight up." Upon seeing Zhang Xuan halt the proceedings, they thought that he wanted to resign and sneered coldly at him. "Regret my decision? You want to make me regret my decision with those standards of yours?" Zhang Xuan activated his aggression pulling aura. "What did you say?" An elder bellowed loudly. As expected, the apothecaries here immediately erupted upon hearing his words. If looks could kill, he would have been sliced into numerous pieces by now. "I'm sorry, I'm not saying that your standards are not up to par. I'm saying that all of you here are unable to make the cut." With his hands behind his back, Zhang Xuan emanated a haughty disposition. "Why? You want to bicker with me? Do you believe that I can choke you all to death with a few words? You arrogant, ignorant brat." Instantaneously, everyone exploded. Everyone flew into a rampage and their beards flew along with their vigorous breathing. Seeing the atmosphere heating up and that he had become a public enemy for all of them here, Zhang Xuan nodded his head in satisfaction with a smile. He looked toward the center of the room and asked, "Guild leader Ouyang, it seems that they look down on me just because I'm my age. To tell you the truth, I also look down on them. Actually, I don't think that there is much point to a mere debate, so why don't we increase the difficulty of the examination?" "Increase the difficulty?" Ouyang Cheng frowned. "Pill debate is already difficult by itself, and you want to increase the difficulty? Also, how do you intend to go about increasing the difficulty?" The others were also bewildered. Lad, do you find your death lacking splendor, so you want to find a more exciting way to do so? Simply, pill debate is just theoretical and words are empty. Ignoring the bizarre expression everyone was shooting him with, Zhang Xuan raised his hands boldly, carrying a majestic disposition with him. How about this? As long as any apothecary here dares to forge pills before me, regardless of what methods he uses, I am able to point out the name of his forging method and the errors he commits in the process. If any of those here finds what I say incorrect, I can admit defeat immediately. Chapter 108, Meng Yan. What? We are official apothecaries, and you, a mere apprentice, dares to claim that you are able to point out our mistakes? What are you putting on an act for? We apothecaries have numerous means up our sleeves. Putting aside whether you can point out our mistakes, if you can even recognize the method we are using to forge pills, we can consider it your win. Upon hearing Zhang Xuan's words, everyone exploded once more. An immature brat dared to claim that he had the ability to see through their forging methods and flaws just by seeing them forge a pill before him? Is he mad? At one side, Ouyang Cheng and Wen Zhu felt frenzied. At the very most, one could only ask some remote questions in pill debate as long as one was well versed in the knowledge of pill forging. Much of it could be rationalized and inferred, however, to point out one's forging method and the errors in it. Pill forging was just like a person's handwriting. There are 10,000 different types of handwriting for 10,000 different people. Even for the same pill, there were at least 1,000 different methods of forging it. The movements in each method were profound and intricate, and a slight difference in their motions could mean an entirely different forging method. Furthermore, each and every pill forging methods that were able to be passed down through the generations were the blood, sweat, and tears of innumerable people and had been refined countless times toward perfection. It might not be entirely perfect, but at the very least, these apothecaries had been using it daily and never found anything off about it. Even if a 3-star apothecary were to be here, it would be hard for him to point out the errors in it. This wasn't just a mere rise in the difficulty anymore, it was an overturn of the rules, raising the difficulty to the heavens. If an apprentice apothecary undergoing a pill debate was equivalent to the difficulty to 3-digit addition and subtraction, what Zhang Xuan proposed was equivalent to Goldbach conjecture. The difficulty wouldn't just increase, it would be increased to an unimaginable level. Brother, are you sure you aren't jesting? Wenzi looked at him as though she was looking at a monster. Yesterday, he wasn't even sure about the existence of a book collection vault in the Apothecary Guild, and he didn't know what books he had to read for the apprentice apothecary examination yet. Today, he suddenly became an expert, putting on airs here. If she didn't witness it personally, she might have thought that he was afflicted with dissociative identity disorder. Even though a human's personality changed over time, it should be impossible for such a massive change to occur in a person in a single day. Even if he wanted to act cool, there should be no need for him to play it so big. Why? You dare not agree? Are you afraid that you will be embarrassed after I point out your errors? Or are you afraid of being humiliated when I point out your forging method? Ignoring their stares, Zhang Xuan chuckled lightly. He had already contemplated over the matter and came up with a solution for passing the pill debate. Even though he was done looking through the basic tier book collection vault in the Apothecary Guild, there was still a certain level of difficulty for him to successfully pass the pill debate. After all, there were so many apothecaries assessing him, and it was hard to tell whether they might have capabilities beyond that of the books. They might come up with questions beyond what was written in the books. If he failed to answer their question, it would be an immediate loss. Since that was the case, he should find a way to prevent them from bringing up such problems in other people's perspective. To determine a forging method and pointing out the flaws in it through watching how a person forged pills was much more difficult than undergoing a pill debate. However, Zhang Xuan possessed the Library of Heaven's Path, which allowed him to easily see through the flaws of others. What was nigh impossible to others became an absolutely simple task before him, only requiring reading word by word off a book. An apothecary forging pills was equivalent to a fighter executing his battle technique. A book would be compiled by looking at it. Thus, Zhang Xuan intentionally drew aggression from the others to incur their rage, after which, by behaving contemptuously, the others would definitely think of him as arrogant and agree to it, as long as they agreed to this method of examination. Once you all agree to it, everything else will be a piece of cake. Witness as I play you all to your deaths. Since you are looking for excitement, we will fulfill your request. Indeed, since you are adamant on acting cool, we'll see how you cry afterward. As he expected, the crowd immediately exploded yet again after his taunting. Every single of them was tempted to pay greetings. Zhang Xuan's 18 generations of ancestors and all of his kin embarrassed your head. The heck that we would be humiliated. We just fear whether you have sufficient capabilities to do so. The 10 apothecaries' fighting spirit roused. If not in consideration of their identity, they would have charged forward to bash him. Since all of you have the guts to agree to it, then let's begin. Upon seeing how he was able to settle the issue so easily, Zhang Xuan chuckled. Then, looking at Ouyang Cheng, who was standing at the center of the room, he said, "Guild leader Ouyang, can we begin?" Of course. He didn't expect a simple pill debate would escalate to this point. Ouyang Cheng felt helpless and frustrated at this moment. He had no choice but to go along with it. May I ask which apothecary would like to go first? I am willing to offer you all 3-pointer. Zhang Xuan flung his sleeves arrogantly. The faces of the crowd flushed red in anger. I can't stand watching him act like this any longer. Allow me to teach this brat a lesson first. Finally, an apothecary couldn't hold in his rage any longer and stood up. It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His face was slightly grey and his eyes glowed as though they were lanterns with a single look. It was clear that he wasn't someone with a good temper. It's Apothecary Meng Yan. Meng Yan's temper may be awful, but he's a true 1-star primary stage apothecary given how he's able to forge over a dozen kinds of pills. He isn't someone to be underestimated. Indeed, a few of his apprentices even made it big. Furthermore, he has many kinds of forging methods. It is most suitable for him to make the first move. Seeing the middle-aged man stepping out, the rest of the apothecaries secretly nodded their heads in agreement. How could there be any mediocre figures among the 1-star apothecaries? This apothecary Meng Yan might not be the most capable apothecary among the group, but his skills were not the worst of the bunch. They would be able to see the capabilities of that arrogant fellow through him. Lad, I will start forging now. If you are unable to tell the forging method later on and point out the flaws in it, prepare to be punished. With a cold sneer, Meng Yan walked over to the cauldron. He casually grabbed a few medicinal herbs from the shelves by the side, and by controlling his Zenki, he induced the flame beneath the cauldron to become even more vigorous. Sunk sun. The flames burned furiously off its fuel and a slight chiming sound resounded from the cauldron, as though it was a giant bell. Stalks after stalks of medicinal herbs were thrown into the cauldron, and under the high temperature, a unique scent of medicine floated into the air. This is pill forging? Zhang Xuan might have read quite a few books in the basic tier book collection vault, but this was the first time he was seeing someone forge a pill. Incredible. He couldn't help but be impressed by it. In terms of cultivation realm, he was in no way inferior to the other party. However, the way how the other party threw the medicinal herbs into the cauldron so casually without the slightest hesitation or pause, and how every single stalk of medicinal herb was placed under optimal conditions for it to best unleash its medicinal properties, it was something he could not hope to match. This required continuous practice over time. He might excel in theories, but this didn't mean that he was capable of materializing it into physical actions. After a moment of looking at it, after integrating the knowledge from the basic tier book collection vault and the analysis on them by the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xuan soon realized that he was unable to discern anything at all. He wasn't even able to see what forging method the other party is utilizing, much less see through the flaws in his actions. No wonder everyone stared at him as though he had gone mad upon hearing his request. If even guild leader Ouyang, who wielded the greatest ability among the group here, was unable to see through his forging method and had a perplexed expression at this very moment, how could an apprentice apothecary possibly see through it? Flaws. After confirming that he was unable to see through it through the sea of knowledge he had accumulated, Zhang Xuan didn't hesitate any longer and he willed for a book to be compiled. Weng. With a loud explosion, the Library of Heaven's Path jolted and a book suddenly appeared in his mind. Written inside were this apothecary Meng Yan's pill forging method and the flaws in them. This, after taking a look, a bizarre expression appeared on Zhang Xuan's face. Chapter 109, Tranquil Heart Pill. Not bad. Meng Yan is getting more and more adept in his pill forging technique. Indeed, if he is able to identify a flaw in his pill forging method, I will twist my head off. Zhang Xuan noticed that the gazes of the other apothecaries were fixated on Meng Yan and they nodded their head in approval in response to the display of his skills. They were able to tell what the other party's pill forging method before and they had once used it as well, so they weren't too unfamiliar with it. This was also precisely the reason why it was harder to find flaws in it. Even they were unable to see the slightest mistake in the other party's forging. Every movement of his strictly adhered to the forging method without a single error in it. Guild leader Ouyang, do you think that he will be able to see through the forging method and the flaws in it? After bringing Zhang Xuan over, Wen Zhu didn't leave immediately at this instance. She was standing behind Ouyang Cheng and she couldn't help but ask him the question. She wasn't even an apprentice and thus, she was unable to see through the various intricacies of pill forging, so she could only place her expectation on this guild leader before her to explain the situation to her. Flaws? Ouyang Cheng shook his head. To tell you the truth, Meng Yan's pill forging method had been passed down for more than 300 years. It went through the hands of countless individuals and even if there is an error in it, it would have long been corrected anyway. Given my level of standard, I am unable to see any errors in it. Not even you are able to discern any flaws? Wen Zhu covered her mouth in shock. Ouyang Cheng was the most capable apothecary in Danxuan Kingdom, reaching the astounding level of the 1-star intermediate stage. If he was unable to discern anything, how could Zhang Xuan, who had just become an apothecary apprentice, possibly tell anything from it? Who? After a moment, the flames weakened. Meng Yan opened the lid and the fragrance of medicine gushed out from the cauldron. The pill had been formed. Meng Yan pinched lightly and grabbed 3 pills from the cauldron. Each of them was round with a smooth surface. They were roughly the size of a longan and radiated a unique glow. Alright, as expected of apothecary Meng Yan, not only was the pill formed, it even reached the level of satiation. Incredible. Looking at the pill in his palm, everyone couldn't help but be impressed. Upon being forged successfully, the pills would assume different appearances depending on the efficacy of its medicinal property. It could be classified into 4 tiers, namely formation, satiation, perfection, and inscribed pill. It was already incredible for typical 1-star primary stage apothecaries to reach the level of formation when forging grade 1 pills. To reach the level of satiation was already something beyond what those of his level was capable of. Lad, I am already done forging my pills, so what method did I just use and what flaws are there in it? Meng Yan returned to his seat and looked at Zhang Xuan coldly. Upon hearing his words, the gaze of the others focused on Zhang Xuan. They wanted to see what kind of shocking words this arrogant lad would speak of. Initially, they thought this lad would speak immediately. However, his eyes simply stared 45 degrees upward with a sorrowful expression on his face. He shook his head slowly and sighed. Hurry up if you have something to say. Seeing this fellow still persisting on keeping up the act, Meng Yan clenched his fist and smashed it on the table. Peng. Given his formidable strength and the current fury he had accumulated, a crack appeared on the table, putting it in a state of near collapse. Since you aren't embarrassed by it, then I will begin speaking. Seeing that the atmosphere was sufficiently heated up, Zhang Xuan looked over calmly with a lowered head and said, if I'm not wrong, the pill you forged should be the Tranquil Heart pill which fighters often consume. That's right. Meng Yan nodded his head. It was easy for an apothecary to see what a kind of pill it was, so it couldn't be considered a formidable feat. The method you used is 10 formulas of tranquil water. Zhang Xuan continued. That's right. This is 10 formulas of tranquil water. This is the most suitable method to forging Tranquil Heart pill. It doesn't mean much for you to see through this. Not expecting for the other party to be able to discern it, Meng Yan was slightly shocked. However, He didn't pay the matter much heed. 10 formulas of tranquil water was a unique method to forge tranquil heart pills. It was said that an apothecary created this method while looking at the surface of the water of a mountainous stream. The entire technique emphasized greatly on delicacy and quietness. There weren't too many intense movements in it, as though it was a quiet stream, flowing slowly and steadily down the mountains as it fulfilled the concept of tranquil heart pill. It was easy for a pill to form using this method to forge it. Given that he was able to tell that the pill forged was tranquil heart pill, it wasn't that difficult to infer that the method used was 10 formulas of tranquil water. True, it doesn't mean much. However, it is a pity that you have warped the 10 formulas of tranquil water beyond recognition, causing it to lose the fundamental meaning behind it. Zhang Xuan flung his hand and said with a stern voice, "Warp beyond recognition? Nonsense. If it is truly warped beyond recognition, how can I possibly successfully forge the tranquil heart pill, even reaching the level of satiation at that?" Meng Yan retorted furiously, "Since you don't believe my words, then I shall point it out clearly to you." Zhang Xuan stepped forward and pinched the pill lightly to place it on his palm. His gaze swept through the room as he asked, "Who can tell me what effects should this pill possess?" Tranquil heart pill is a grade 1 pill. It helps cultivators to calm their mind so that their thoughts will not wander. This kind of pill is effective even on Fighter 8 Danzongzi realm experts, and as such, it is one of the best sellers of the Apothecary Guild. Wen Zhu said, as a receptionist, she had sold all kinds of pills. It was natural that she would have a deep understanding of the effects of this tranquil heart pill. Indeed, this pill can help cultivators to calm their minds. Zhang Xuan nodded his head in satisfaction. However, it's a pity that this pill which Apothecary Meng Yan doesn't have such effects. On the contrary, it might even cause a person's cultivation to go berserk if consumed. Nonsense. Meng Yan's expression darkened. The other party's action of doubting the efficacy of his pill in public was equivalent to humiliating him. "You need not be so quick to refute my words. Let me finish my words first." Ignoring the other party's burst of outrage, Zhang Xuan chuckled and continued, "If this pill was created by Apothecary Meng Yan yesterday, I wouldn't say such words. However, it is a pity that it isn't yesterday now, and this pill is destined to be a failure. Yesterday? Is there any difference to it? Lad, clarify your words. Don't try to mystify us." Upon hearing Zhang Xuan's words, the crowd had no idea what Zhang Xuan was driving at. As such, they couldn't help but raise their doubts. "I will explain to you all right now. Forging pills aren't just about technique and skills. One's mental state plays a huge part in it as well. Only by infusing one's mental state into the pill will the efficacy of the medicine be heightened. Tranquil heart pill requires the mental state of the apothecary forging it to be serene, and only through such can the pill be forged perfectly. I believe all of you should have seen the bad temper of Apothecary Meng Yan. He can be set off easily with a single word. With rage in his heart, how can he possibly forge the tranquil heart pill which calms others?" At which, Zhang Xuan slightly knocked on the table before Meng Yan. A crack had appeared in the table after the latter's previous punch. At this moment, unable to take the pressure any longer, it fell apart. Upon the sight, everyone came to a realization. His words were true. Pill forging was intricately linked to one's state of mind. It was inappropriate and unsuitable for one to forge a tranquil heart pill when under such rampaging emotions. Of course, his fiery temper isn't sufficient to ruin the pill. The crux of the problem is that there is killing intent within Apothecary Meng Yan right now. If I'm not wrong, you probably killed someone this morning and you still bear resentment toward the person. Most probably, you were betrayed by someone you trust. This resentment and killing intent have been infused into the tranquil heart pill when you were forging it. Even though only a sliver of it had slipped in to the cultivators who consume it, it could have disastrous after effects. It increases the possibility of their cultivation going berserk exponentially. If so, it will result in fatal damage onto their fundamentals. Zhang Xuan said, You. Meng Yan's body swayed. He looked at Zhang Xuan as though he was looking at a ghost, and his face immediately turned ghastly white. Chapter 110, You are about to die. Just like what Zhang Xuan said, Meng Yan was hiding resentment and killing intent within his heart. He was also betrayed by someone he deeply trusted in. Just that, it was something that happened this morning. He thought that his rage had already ceased, and never would he have thought that he would infuse these emotions into his pill. But how was he able to tell? Through the pill he forged? How was that possible? It's true. Upon seeing Meng Yan's expression, even the most dull-witted of the lot could tell that what Zhang Xuan said was the truth. They stared at one another in disbelief. Not only was he able to discern the killing intent in him through his pill forging, he is even able to deduce that he was betrayed by a trusted person. Are you an apprentice apothecary or a fortune teller? If you all think that there's something wrong with my words, there is an easy way to ascertain it. The guild should have pill sample beasts, right? We can feed this tranquil heart pill to it and see whether it will calm down or rampage. Upon seeing Meng Yan at a loss for words, Zhang Xuan chuckled lightly. Usually, in order to ascertain the authenticity and effects of a pill, the Apothecary Guild would prepare some pill sample beasts to test them. This savage beast was extremely sensitive towards pills. Upon consumption of the pills, one could determine the effects of the pills through its response. It corresponded to the lab rats used in clinical trials in the world of Zhang Xuan's previous life. Only after passing the tests could the medicine be fed to humans. This was to ensure the safety of those consuming it. Yang Cheng nodded his head, and an apprentice apothecary walked out of the room in a moment. A cage of savage beasts that resembled white mice was brought over. Opening the mouth of one, the tranquil heart pill was fed to it. A short moment later, the pill sample beast started to get agitated, running around the cage and clawing everything in sight. It didn't seem to be calming down in the least. Normally, after consuming a tranquil heart pill, the pill sample beast would lie quietly by the side, yet, after consuming this pill, the pill sample beast becomes visibly agitated. In the midst, through Zhang Xuan's words, The pill sample beast who consumed the tranquil heart pill ran toward another of its kind, climbed on top of it and started to conduct insertion exercises forcibly onto the other party. Cough cough. The strong sexual drive experienced by the one who consumes the pill shows that not only does the pill not calms one, it even induces anger in them. If I'm not wrong, the person whom Apothecary Meng Yan killed today is a woman, one whom he had a sexual relationship with. Her eventual betrayal resulted in his outrage, causing the pill to contain strong emotions of possessiveness and frenzy. This, upon seeing the drugged pill sample beast in the cage crushing on another pill sample beast and forcing itself on the other, not giving the other party a chance to retaliate at all. The other apothecaries stared at one another in astonishment. Is this really tranquil heart pill? Are you sure that it isn't an aphrodisiac? It is fortunate that it isn't fed to a human, otherwise, not only will their heart no calm down, they will even turn into a cough cough. It will cause disastrous effects. Everyone shuddered upon thinking about the possibility. This morning, I saw the concubine that I dote on the most conducting adultery on me with the butler in that instant. Rage filled me and I killed both of them on the spot. Upon seeing everyone's gaze focusing on him, Meng Yan shook his head as he explained. Since the other party had already said so much, there was nothing for him to hide. This incident had made him furious for the entire day. He had been in bad mood. The reason why he stepped out was to embarrass Zhang Xuan so as to vent his frustration. Is that for it? Seeing through so much through looking at another forged pill. Seeing Meng Yan admit to it, the others stared at Zhang Xuan as though he was a monster. If their gazes were contemptuous before, they had a grave expression on at this very moment. One's pill reflected one's state of mind, but to see that an apothecary had killed someone earlier this morning, even inferring that the person was his concubine, through watching him forge pills. The heck, you must be a constable, right? Otherwise how could he possibly tell that much? Alright, I have already pointed out the flaws in it, Apothecary Meng Yan. Do you need me to go on? Ignoring the shocked expression on the others, Zhang Xuan said with a smile. The Library of Heaven's Path could see through all flaws. It was a simple task for him to tell that he had been betrayed by his concubine and that his pill carried killing intent and resentment. There's no need, I admit defeat. Meng Yan surrendered. The numerous apothecaries on the field, including himself, weren't able to see through the problem in the pill he forged yet. The other party was able to see through it directly. Even telling so much about it, it was a clear loss, even if he didn't wish to accept it. Just like that he surrendered. Wen Zhu's eyes widened. An apothecary admitted defeat to an apprentice. If she didn't see this for herself, she wouldn't dare to believe it. However, it made sense when she thought about it to be able to see that far. That fellow's eye for discernment was too incredible. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Alright, next. Now that the first person had admitted defeat, Zhang Xuan had achieved first blood, he turned to look at the remaining 9 people with a smile. I shall face him. An elderly stood up. If they thought that Zhang Xuan was here to cause trouble previously, after Meng Yan's incident, they finally understood that this fellow was an expert among experts. No wonder he was so confident as to dare to challenge the pill debate, even raising the difficulty at that. It is Apothecary Chen Xiao. Apothecary Chen may not be the best among us in terms of pill forging, but he is the oldest. He is an extremely rational and calm person. Unlike Meng Yan and his fiery temper, I believe that he will be able to defeat that lad. Seeing the elder stand up, everyone secretly nodded their heads in approval. This Apothecary Chen Xiao was the oldest among the 10 of them, as well as the most level-headed one. Surely there wouldn't be any problems if he was the one to make a move. The flame beneath the cauldron crackled in a moment's time. He extracted a few pills from it. It was the same pill as the one Meng Yan forged previously, Tranquil Heart pill. It was also perfectly round and smooth with radiance glowing off its surface. However, it was clearly of higher quality, reaching perfection. Alright, I am done forging the pills. You don't need to identify the forging method. It's the same as the one Apothecary Meng Yan used previously. 10 formulas of tranquil water. If you're able to point out the flaws in it, I will concede and admit defeat. Apothecary Chen Xiao said calmly as he grasped the pills he just forged in his hands. Incredible. This is truly a wise move. To use the same forging method to forge the exact same pills previously. He was able to point out the killing intent in Apothecary Meng Yan's heart as the flaw in his pill forging, but Apothecary Chen Xiao's state of mind is serene and he is a level-headed person. He should be unable to find another one of this kind of flaw on him. Let's see how he will fare this time. Upon seeing Apothecary Chen Xiao's actions, everyone couldn't help but exclaim internally that it was indeed the older ones who were more cunning. Even Zhang Xuan couldn't help but nod his head. The other party was indeed extremely wise, even though the other party had clearly told him that he used the same forging method so that he doesn't have to guess it. His actions were, in fact, making it more difficult for him to answer. However, to the Library of Heaven's Path this was nothing at all. Zhang Xuan looked at him, seemingly nonchalant to his actions. If I'm not wrong, Apothecary Chen Xiao should have trouble sleeping and eating recently. Ah? Apothecary Chen Xiao was taken aback. It's true that I have been having problems sleeping, and my appetite isn't good recently. However, this should have nothing to do with pill forging though? So what if I don't eat or sleep? You just have to tell me about the flaws in my pill forging. Why are you telling me about my body condition? Besides, about me not sleeping well and having no appetite, how did you know about it? Nothing to do with it. You're wrong. It is related to it in every way. Zhang Xuan shook his head. Related to it in every way? Enlighten me. Apothecary Chen Xiao couldn't help but look over. If I'm not wrong, you are about to die. Zhang Xuan said.